The unexpected encounter it was late at night when the strange light appeared in the sky. Mark had just finished his shift at the local diner and was driving home, the streets empty and quiet. He wasn't expecting anything unusual. But then, a bright flash lit up the sky, making him slam on the brakes. The light grew brighter, like a shooting star, but it wasn't a star. It was something different, something that didn't belong. Mark's heart raced as he watched the object fall. It was coming down fast, moving too quickly for a plane or any regular aircraft. He pulled over to the side of the road, his eyes glued to the sky. The light grew bigger as it came closer, and then it crashed. There was a loud boom, followed by a wave of heat that hit him. The explosion threw dirt into the air, but strangely, Mark wasn't scared. Instead, he felt a strange pull, a sense of curiosity, that made him step out of the car and start walking toward the crash site. The place was a small forest just outside town, far enough from the main road that not many people would be around. As Mark approached the clearing where the light had landed, he noticed the smell of burning trees and smoke in the air. His steps slowed, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The ground was still warm beneath his feet as he stepped carefully through the trees. Then he saw it. A small, glowing object sat in the center of the clearing. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen. It wasn't a plane, nor was it anything familiar to him. The object was shaped like a small pod, glowing with soft blue light. It was smooth and metallic, with strange markings on its surface. Mark took a deep breath. What was it? Was it from another country? Another world? His mind raced with questions. He stepped closer, careful not to disturb the strange object. As he knelt down, trying to get a better look, a low sound suddenly came from inside the pod. It was soft at first, like a whisper, but then it grew louder. Mark froze, his heart pounding. The sound was almost like a cry, but not one he recognized. It wasn't human. It was something else. His curiosity pushed him forward. He carefully touched the surface of the pod. The moment his hand made contact, the object seemed to react, the glow brightening for a split second before fading away. The sound of crying grew louder, and Mark felt a strange urge to find out what it was. With shaky hands, he gently pried open the pod. Inside, he found a small, alien child. The creature was curled up tightly, its body covered in soft, pale blue skin. Its face was delicate, with large, dark eyes that stared up at him in fear. Its ears were long and pointed, like nothing Mark had ever seen before. It was unlike any child he had ever encountered. For a moment, Mark was frozen, unsure of what to do. He had never seen anything like this. Was it real? Was it possible that this was some kind of alien life form? His mind raced, but all he could think of was the child in front of him. It was so small, so fragile. It looked up at him, its eyes filled with fear and confusion. Mark's instincts kicked in. He couldn't just leave the child here. He couldn't just walk away and pretend. He hadn't seen this. This wasn't just a strange creature. It was a life, and it needed help. He carefully scooped the child into his arms. The alien was surprisingly light, and its skin felt warm against his own. It wasn't just a piece of technology or a strange object. It was living, breathing. Mark's heart softened as he cradled the child in his arms. It was scared, and it needed protection. "Hey there," Mark whispered, his voice shaky but gentle. "You're safe now." But as he turned to leave, the strange feeling of being watched hit him. It was as if someone or something was standing just behind him, waiting. He didn't dare turn around, but he could feel the weight of whatever it was. He hurried back to his car, the child in his arms, and looked over his shoulder one last time. The woods were silent again, but the hairs on the back of his neck stood up. Someone or something was out there, and Mark had a feeling that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than he could ever imagine. That he drove away. The alien child still in his arms, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a choice that would change everything. He had rescued a lost child, but what did it mean? And why did he feel like he wasn't alone? The night felt heavier now, and the future seemed uncertain. But for now, all he could do was protect the small life in his arms, not knowing that this was the start of an adventure that would push him to the very edge of the unknown. The silent visitor, the next few days were a blur for Mark. The child, whom he had taken to calling Lyra, was now staying with him in his small apartment. He had no idea what to do next. No one would believe him if he told them about the alien child. How could he explain what happened? How could he even begin to understand what he had found? Lyra wasn't like a regular child. She didn't speak, and it was impossible to get a clear reaction from her, but she seemed to understand Mark. She would follow him around the apartment with her large, dark eyes watching every movement he made. It was unsettling at times, but it was also oddly comforting. She never cried anymore, and she seemed to adapt to the space quickly, as if she had been here before. But then, one evening, things started to feel different. Mark had just come back from work, feeling exhausted. He'd been trying to keep the situation hidden, fearing someone might come looking for her. As he stepped into the apartment, the silence greeted him. Normally, Lyra would be there, sitting in the living room or in the corner of his bedroom, but today there was no sign of her. His heart skipped a beat. "Lyra," he called, his voice slightly panicked. Nothing. He moved through the apartment, checking every room. His heart thumped harder in his chest as he made his way to the kitchen. But then, as he walked past the living room, he saw her standing in the middle of the room, staring at the window with her back to him. "Lyra," he said again, this time quieter. Unsure if he had startled her, she didn't respond. Instead, she tilted her head, her long pointed ears twitching. Mark took a step forward, his eyes following her. There was something strange about the way she was standing. Her body was rigid, and her eyes seemed fixed on something far beyond the window. It was as if she could see something. He COULDN, single quote, T. Suddenly, the air in the room grew cold. Mark felt a chill creep up his spine. His instincts screamed at him to leave the room, but he couldn't look away from the strange sight in front of him. Lyra's eyes glowed faintly, like the stars in the night sky. Her small body shuddered, and then, without warning, she turned to him. The look in her eyes was different, no more intense, more urgent. She reached out a hand, her fingers trembling, as if trying to communicate something. Mark stepped forward, kneeling down to her level. "Lyra, what's wrong? What's going on?" He reached out to touch her arm, but as soon as his hand made contact, the glow in her eyes seemed to fade. For a long moment, they both stayed silent, the air thick with tension. Then, without any warning, the room was filled with a low hum. The sounds seemed to come from nowhere, yet everywhere at once. Mark's heart raced as the hum grew louder, and then, just as suddenly, it stopped. Lyra blinked. Her expression softened, but Mark could tell something had changed. She had seen something, or maybe felt something, that he couldn't understand. Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer, and then she silently walked over to the couch. Curling up as if nothing had happened, Mark stood there, trying to make sense of what had just occurred. What had that been? The humming sound? Lyra's reaction? And why did he feel like something or someone was watching them? He looked out the window, but there was nothing there, just the empty streets of his neighborhood. No one could have seen them, or so he thought. As Mark turned back to Lyra, his phone buzzed. He picked it up, but before he could read the message, a sudden crash outside made him jump. His heart raced again. He rushed to the window, pulling back the curtains. Nothing was there, but something felt wrong. He walked back to Lyra, who had curled herself into a ball on the couch, her eyes still glowing faintly. Mark kneeled down next to her, trying to comfort her. But as his hand hovered near her, the hum returned softer this time, almost like a whisper, and then, just like that, it stopped. The air was heavy, and Mark realized that whatever had just happened wasn't over. There was something he didn't know, something much bigger than him, that had just started to make its presence felt. Mark had rescued a lost alien child, but it seemed as if the story was far from over. Something was coming for them, and Lyra knew it, and Mark, he was caught in the middle of it all. The mothers approached the days past in a strange blur for Mark. The hums and unexplainable events had become more frequent. But no matter how much he tried to make sense of it all, it felt like he was losing control. Lyra had become more distant, her behavior growing even stranger. She barely ate or spoke, and the connection between them, which once felt comforting, now felt more like a warning. Mark knew that something wasn't right. Lyra was hiding something from him, or perhaps she simply couldn't understand how to explain what was happening. He had tried everything, talking to her, trying to comfort her, even taking her to the local doctor for a checkup, though the doctor had no idea how to treat an alien child. Nothing worked. But on the fourth night, everything changed. Mark had just finished his late-night work shift and was heading back home. It was around 11 p.m., and the streetlights outside flickered as he walked through the door. The apartment was unusually quiet, no hums, no strange sounds. It seemed almost peaceful, but as he stepped inside, he immediately felt it. That familiar unease, the coldness in the air. Lyra. He called out softly, his voice echoing in the empty apartment. No response. His heart skipped. For a moment, panic rose in his chest. She was always near him, always watching. Where could she be? As he walked through the living room, checking the rooms one by one, he finally found her standing in the corner, near the window again, staring out into the night. But this time, something was different. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if she was waiting for something or someone. Lyra, Mark whispered, stepping closer. She turned slowly, her large dark eyes meeting his. This time, there was no fear, no urgency. Instead, there was a quiet understanding. Then, without warning, she lifted her hand and pointed toward the window. Her lips barely moved as she whispered a single word, "Mother." Before Mark could ask her what she meant, a low, eerie sound vibrated through the walls of the apartment, growing louder by the second. It was the hum again, but this time, it wasn't coming from Lyra. It was coming from outside. A pulse of energy ran through the room, and Mark could feel his chest tighten. It was like the air itself had changed, the very atmosphere thick with tension. His breath caught in his throat as he rushed to the window. What he saw sent a chill down his spine. Figure was standing in the middle of the street below, cloaked in shadow. It was tall, far taller than a normal person, almost inhuman. Its silhouette was strange, its movements fluid and unnatural, and yet somehow it was undeniably powerful. The hums grew louder as the figure moved closer, as if responding to something. Unseen, Mark stepped back, his heart racing. Was this it? The mother? Lyra stepped forward, her tiny hand still pointed toward the window, her eyes fixed on the figure outside. She didn't seem afraid. In fact, she seemed almost relieved. Mark watched in awe and fear as the figure slowly moved closer to the building. Then it stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. No hums, no sound, just the stillness of the night. Mark's throat tightened, and he found it hard to breathe. Something told him that this was the moment everything would change. This was the moment he would face whatever he had been unknowingly drawn into. Suddenly, the door to the apartment creaked open. Mark whipped around, and there, standing in the doorway, was a woman. But not just any woman. She was tall, her skin a soft shade of blue, her long hair flowing like silver threads. Her eyes were as dark as the night sky, deep and full of ancient wisdom. She was beautiful, but there was something terrifying in her presence. She didn't speak, but her gaze met Mark's with an intensity that made his entire body freeze. Lyra, standing beside Mark, reached out to her. She didn't speak either, but the connection between them was clear. The mother and child. The bond that had drawn Mark into this world he didn't understand. The woman's lips moved. You have protected her. Now you must understand what you have awakened. Mark swallowed hard, his voice trembling. Who are you? What is this? Why is this happening? The alien woman stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. I am her mother. I have come for her, but more importantly, I have come to warn you. Her voice was soft, but it carried a power that sent shivers down his spine. There are others who will come for her. For you, they will not be merciful. Mark's head spun as the weight of her words sank in. This wasn't just a lost child. This was far bigger than him. Why me? Mark whispered, his mind racing. What do you want from me? The woman looked at him with a calm expression. We want nothing from you, but the forces we are dealing with have no mercy. You've been chosen, Mark. The path you've started is not one that can be undone. As the woman's words echoed in the room, Mark felt something change. The air around him grew heavier. The hums grew louder again. It was like everything was closing in on him. There was no turning back now. The alien woman reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. Prepare yourself. You will face trials like nothing you've known. But remember, your choices will determine her fate and yours. Before Mark could ask another question, the woman turned and disappeared into the shadows, vanishing. Without a sound, Lyra stood there, staring out the window again. The hums stopped. The room fell into silence. Mark was left standing, shaken, in the dimly lit apartment, realizing that his life had changed forever. The deal the night after the mysterious woman had visited felt like a dream, or perhaps a nightmare. Mark couldn't shake the unease that clung to him. He spent the entire evening sitting in his apartment, his eyes flickering between Lyra and the window, waiting for something to happen. He didn't know if he could trust the alien woman, or if the words she had spoken were meant to warn him or frighten him. All he knew was that everything was changing, and the world he had known before was no longer the same. Lyra had fallen asleep early, curled up in her spot on the couch, her tiny body twitching slightly as if she were in the midst of some strange dream. Mark couldn't help but watch her, his heart heavy with the weight of the unknown. She had seemed so peaceful earlier, yet he could feel the danger lurking just outside. The woman's cryptic words echoed in his mind. "You've been chosen." The doorbell rang. Mark's heart skipped. He hadn't been expecting anyone, and the sudden noise cut through the silence like a knife. His mind raced. Could it be the alien woman again? Or worse, someone else? He walked to the door, his hand shaking as he reached for the knob. As soon as he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. The woman was standing there, just like before. Her tall, glowing form bathed in the soft moonlight, her eyes dark and unreadable. But this time, she wasn't alone. Standing beside her was another figure, taller, much more imposing. His skin was a darker shade of blue, and his hair was slicked back, revealing sharp, angular features. His eyes glowed faintly, like embers. In the dark, there was a quiet power about him that made Mark's pulse quicken. This was no ordinary being. The woman stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Mark's. "I see you've been thinking about what I told you. You must understand, this is not a simple matter. Your life is now intertwined with hers." Mark stepped back, his mind racing. "Why me? Why are you here? What do you want from me?" The woman's gaze softened, just slightly. "What we want is not what you think. What we need is for you to help us protect the child. She is not just any alien child. She is key to a much larger struggle." Mark's confusion deepened. "Struggle? What do you mean? Who's after her?" The man beside her stepped forward, his voice low and powerful. "There are others beings who seek to control what Lyra represents. Her arrival here, her existence, is not by chance. We need your help, Mark. You are tied to her now, and there are forces beyond our reach that would destroy you both." The woman nodded. "But we can offer you protection. A choice, if you will. You can choose to walk away, forget everything, and live the rest of your life as it was, or ... Her eyes glowed brighter, and Mark could feel the weight of her words. "You can join us. Help us protect her, and, in return, we will grant you abilities beyond anything you can imagine." Mark stood frozen, struggling to comprehend what was happening. His mind was spinning. Was he truly a part of something much bigger than himself? Was this real? I don't understand. What kind of abilities? And what do you mean by help? How can I possibly help you protect her? The man's expression was unreadable, but his voice carried the weight of authority. "You have already begun helping her simply by bringing her here. She trusts you now, and that trust will allow you to gain the strength you need to protect her. But the decision is yours." Mark's mind was a whirlwind. Was this some kind of dream, or was he actually being asked to join forces with these beings, these aliens who claimed that his life was now tied to their cause? "What do you mean, my life is tied to hers?" he asked, his voice shaky. "I don't know anything about this. I'm just a normal guy." The woman stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his. "You're not as normal as you think, Mark. You've been chosen for a reason. The moment you saved her, your path was sealed. You've now become a part of this world. Your choices from here on out will shape not only her future, but your own." Mark swallowed, trying to process the gravity of her words. "So what happens if I refuse? What happens if I walk away?" The man stepped forward again, his eyes glowing brighter now. "Then you will become a target, not just for those who seek to control her, but for forces beyond even our understanding. They will stop at nothing to use her for their own gain, and if they come for her and find you unprepared, they will destroy everything you know, everything you love." Mark felt the weight of his choices pressing on him. There was no turning back now. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Lyra. It was about the child he had rescued. The woman's voice softened. "This is your choice, Mark. But know this, if you choose to help us, you will gain abilities, strength, power, knowledge that goes beyond your wildest dreams. You will not be alone in this fight. Together, we can protect her." For a long moment, Mark stood there, unsure of what to say. His life had changed forever the moment he found Lyra. But now, standing in front of these powerful beings, the weight of the decision before him seemed heavier than anything he had ever felt. He looked down at Lyra, who had silently entered the room, standing beside him. Her large, dark eyes met his, filled with trust and something else, something he couldn't yet understand. Finally, Mark spoke, his voice firm with the decision he had made. "I'll do it. I'll help you. I'll protect her." The woman nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. "Then prepare yourself, Mark. The journey ahead will not be easy, but it will be worth it." As they turned to leave, Mark felt a rush of emotion surge within him. He didn't fully understand what he had just agreed to, but he knew one thing for sure: his life would never be the same again. And as the door closed behind them, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something far greater was at play, something he was only just beginning to comprehend. Transformation. The decision had been made. Mark had agreed to join them, to help protect Lyra and uncover the mysteries of this alien world he had found himself thrust into. The woman and the man, his new allies, had promised him power, knowledge, and strength, but Mark had no idea what those words truly meant. They hadn't told him much, only that the transformation would take time. The days that followed felt like a blur. Mark spent more time with Lyra, trying to understand her needs, her fears. She seemed calmer now, more at peace than she had been before, but there was still a sense of distance between them. Mark couldn't tell if it was because she was still adjusting to being in a new world, or if she was holding back something from him. He had so many questions, but every time he tried to ask her, it felt like the answers were just out of reach. And then, one morning, things changed. Mark woke up early, as he always did, and as he made his way to the kitchen, he noticed something strange. The air in the apartment felt ... different. It wasn't the usual weight of silence that he had grown accustomed to. No, this felt like a change was coming, something that he wasn't quite ready for. He glanced over at Lyra's room, but the small alien child was already standing in the living room, her eyes wide, glowing faintly in the dim light. She wasn't just standing there. She was staring at him, like she was waiting for something. "Lyra," Mark called out cautiously. Her head turned slowly, and she walked toward him, her movements more graceful than before. Mark felt a sudden rush of warmth flood through him, and his heart pounded in his chest. Something was happening to him. Lyra stopped in front of him and raised her hand, her eyes fixed on his. Mark's first instinct was to step back, but he was rooted to the spot. He couldn't move. It was as if some invisible force was holding him in place. The moment her hand touched his chest, the change came. A pulse of energy shot through his body, unlike anything he had ever felt. It was as if his very cells were alive, vibrating with an energy that was both foreign and familiar at the same time. The sensation was overwhelming, and Mark gasped, struggling to catch his breath. The world around him blurred, and for a brief moment, he felt like he was floating. It was like his body was no longer his own, like the boundaries between himself and the universe had dissolved. The next thing Mark knew, the sensation stopped as quickly as it had started. He staggered back, his head spinning, and collapsed onto the couch. His body felt ... different. Stronger, somehow, but also lighter. It was as if something deep inside him had been unlocked, something that had been dormant all his life. Lyra stood silently, watching him, her eyes glowing brighter now. And Mark realized with a start that she hadn't just touched him. She had shared something with him, a gift, power. He stood up slowly, feeling the change within him. His senses were sharper. He could hear the soft hum of electricity in the walls, the faint rustle of the trees outside. His body felt stronger, more agile. It was as though every fiber of his being had been enhanced, tuned to the rhythm of something beyond human comprehension. But with the power came a heavy burden. Mark could feel it, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The alien mother had warned him. There were dangers ahead. Forces beyond their control would be coming for them. And now, he wasn't just a bystander. He was a part of the struggle. "Lyra," he whispered, his voice shaking. "What did you just do to me?" She didn't respond in words, but Mark could see it in her eyes. She was communicating with him in a way he couldn't fully understand yet. He had been chosen. He had been transformed. And now, he would need to use this newfound power to protect her. The door to the apartment opened suddenly, and Mark turned to see the woman and the man standing in the doorway, watching him closely. Their expressions were unreadable, but Mark could feel the shift in the air as they entered. "You've felt it, haven't you?" the man asked, his voice low and steady. Mark nodded, still trying to steady himself. "I feel ... different, stronger." The woman stepped forward, her eyes scanning him. "The transformation is complete. You are no longer just a human. You are part of something much greater, part of her world and part of ours." Mark swallowed hard, trying to process the enormity of what was happening to him. "But what does that mean? What's coming? What do I need to do?" The woman's gaze hardened. "There are forces that will come for her, for you, and when they do, you must be ready. You will not face this alone, but you will face it with a strength you did not have before. This is only the beginning." Mark felt the weight of her words, the gravity of the situation settling over him like a storm cloud. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew one thing for certain: he wasn't the same person he had been just days ago. The power he had gained, the transformation he had undergone, wasn't just a gift. It was a responsibility, and with that responsibility came the knowledge that he would have to protect Lyra. He would have to fight for her future and for his own. As the woman and man turned to leave, Mark stood tall, the weight of his new role settling firmly on his shoulders. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was clear: his life had been changed forever, and nothing, not even the most dangerous forces in the universe, would stop him from keeping his promise to Lyra. The enemy awakens. Mark had barely begun to adjust to his new reality when the first sign of danger arrived. It had been a few days since the transformation, and Mark was beginning to grow accustomed to his enhanced abilities. He could hear things from miles away. He could sense the tiniest shifts in the air around him. His body was stronger, faster, more than just human. It was as if every cell had been redesigned for something greater. But as the days passed, Mark couldn't ignore the growing unease gnawing at him. Something was coming. That night, Mark sat on the edge of the couch, Lyra beside him, quietly watching the window. The quiet hum in the air had returned, a subtle vibration that set his teeth on edge. He had felt it before, right before something changed. It was then that the door to his apartment burst open with a force that shook the walls. Mark's instincts kicked in immediately, his body tensing, ready to act. Lyra's eyes widened, and she instinctively huddled closer to him. He stood up, his heart racing, and turned to see a shadow moving in the doorway. The figure in the doorway was tall, humanoid, and completely alien. It wore a sleek, metallic armor that reflected the dim light of the room. Its eyes were glowing red, and its movements were fluid, almost robotic. But there was no mistaking the danger it radiated. This wasn't someone here to help, they were here to destroy. Mark, a voice hissed from the figure, a voice that sent chills down his spine. You are the one who saved her. You are the one who chose to protect her. Mark's pulse quickened as he stepped in front of Lyra, his newfound abilities making him more confident than he had ever been before. What do you want? The figure stepped closer, its glowing red eyes never leaving him. You cannot protect her forever, human. We have come for her, and for you. The air in the room seemed to grow heavier with every word, and Mark's heart pounded harder in his chest. He could feel the power of the being before him, like a tangible force pressing against his body. The words echoed in his mind, and for the first time since his transformation, he felt a sliver of fear. Lyra stepped forward from behind Mark, her small hand reaching up to touch his arm. Mark's gaze shifted to her, and he saw something in her eyes, a sadness, a knowing. She's the key, the figure continued, its voice low and cold. And you will not stop us from taking her. Mark's mind raced. He didn't fully understand everything about Lyra or the powers she had, but he knew one thing for sure: he couldn't let them take her. He couldn't let them take everything he had just gained. He wasn't going to back down. I won't let you take her, Mark said, his voice steady, his body tensing with power. He was ready to fight. The figure smiled, if it could even be called a smile. It was a twisted, malicious grin that sent a wave of unease through Mark. You have no idea what you're dealing with, the figure said, raising a hand. The room around them seemed to shift, the air warping and rippling like water in a storm. Before Mark could react, a blast of energy shot toward him. It was a bright blue wave of force that slammed into him, throwing him across the room. He crashed into the wall with a violent force, the impact knocking the wind out of him. Pain exploded in his chest, but Mark refused to stay down. His body surged with energy as he pushed himself off the floor, the effects of the blast already wearing off. He could feel his body healing faster than it ever could before, the energy flowing through him like a surge of electricity. Lyra was still watching from the corner, her eyes wide with fear. But there was something else there too, something Mark hadn't noticed before. There was a power in her eyes, a depth of understanding. She wasn't helpless. She was waiting. The figure advanced toward him, its hands crackling with energy. It was going to finish the job. But Mark wasn't going to let that happen. He charged forward, his body faster than it had ever been. The figure didn't expect him to recover so quickly. Mark slammed into it with all the power he could muster, knocking it back a few feet. But the figure quickly regained its balance, launching a series of attacks that Mark barely managed to dodge. Each blast felt like a blow from a wrecking ball, the force of each one rattling his bones. But with each attack, Mark's confidence grew. He had the power now. He was stronger, faster, and he was going to protect Lyra. They fought back and forth, the room shaking with each clash of power. Mark used every ounce of his new abilities, pushing himself to his limits, feeling the energy crackling inside him. He could feel the heat of the alien's energy blasts, the sting of each attack, but he fought through the pain. He wasn't going to stop until he had defeated this enemy. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mark found an opening. The figure was distracted for just a moment, and that was all he needed. He pushed forward, delivering a powerful blow that sent the enemy crashing to the ground. The figure tried to rise, but Mark was faster, pinning it to the floor. The figure groaned in frustration, but made no move to get up. Mark stood over it, panting heavily, his body aching. The figure lay still, its red eyes flickering weakly. "This is not over, human," it hissed, its voice laced with venom. Mark stepped back, his chest heaving with breath. "It is for now." The figure let out a low growl, and then, without warning, it vanished into thin air, leaving only the faint hum of energy behind. Mark looked at Lyra, who had not moved from her spot in the corner. She was staring at him, her eyes wide and full of silent understanding. "That was only the first of many," Mark whispered, feeling the weight of the battle ahead. "They'll be back." But Mark didn't feel fear. He felt determination. He had made a choice, and he was going to see it through, no matter the cost. The final choice. The hours following the battle were the most silent Mark had ever experienced. The apartment was still, the air thick with the tension that had come after the attack. Mark's body was sore, his muscles aching from the fight, but it was more than that. It was the weight of what he now understood. The figure that had attacked them, he wasn't just some random enemy. This was part of something larger. The forces after Lyra were not just trying to control her. They were trying to destroy everything that stood between them and whatever dark goal they had in mind. And the terrifying part, this was only the beginning. Mark stood near the window, staring out into the night. The city was quiet, unaware of the battle that had just taken place, unaware of the war that was quietly beginning to unfold. The hums in the air had stopped, but the sense of urgency hadn't gone away. The world felt different, now heavier, more dangerous. Lyra sat on the couch, her gaze fixed on him, though she had said nothing since the attack. She didn't need to speak. Mark could feel it. She was waiting for him to make the next decision. Finally, Mark turned and looked at her. Her eyes were calm, almost serene, yet there was something in them, something that had always been there, that told him she understood the stakes better than he did. "You knew this was coming," Mark said softly, his voice more to himself than to her. "Didn't you?" Lyra didn't answer. She didn't need to. He took a deep breath. The choice was clear. He could walk away. He could leave everything behind, go back to his old life, and pretend none of this had ever happened. He could forget about the alien child he had saved, the mysterious alien forces, and the strange new powers that had awakened inside him. But there was no turning back now. Mark had seen what the enemy was capable of. He had felt the power surge through him when he fought back. He had no doubt in his mind that the enemy would return stronger, more dangerous, and when they did, they would stop at nothing to take Lyra. If he didn't fight for her now, there would be no one left to protect her, and he couldn't live with that. "I won't walk away," Mark whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "I can't. I'm not going to let them take her." Lyra's eyes softened, and she stood up from the couch, walking slowly toward him. Her small hand reached out and touched his arm, her touch light but full of meaning. Mark could feel the weight of her trust, and he understood, in that moment, that this wasn't just about fighting for her, it was about something much bigger. Lyra wasn't just any alien child. She was part of something that could change the fate of worlds. The forces after her weren't just after her, they were after everything she represented. "I'll protect you," Mark said, his voice firm, with resolve. "No matter what it takes, we'll fight this together." Lyra nodded silently, and Mark knew she understood. They were no longer just two strangers caught in a strange world. They were a team, and whatever came next, they would face it together. The door to the apartment opened, and the woman and the man, his allies, walked in. They didn't need to say anything. They knew the decision had been made. "We've been watching," the man said, his voice calm but grave. "The enemy will not rest. They will come again, and next time they'll be ready. But so will you." Mark nodded, his gaze locked on the man. "I'm ready." The woman stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly. "You have made the right choice. The path ahead will not be easy, but with the power you now possess, you stand a chance. But remember, Mark, this is not just about strength. It's about wisdom. It's about making the right choices when the time comes." Mark looked at her, his expression serious. "I understand, but I won't back down. I'll fight for her." The woman gave a slight nod, her face unreadable. "Then prepare yourselves. The final battle is coming, and it will test you in ways you cannot imagine." Mark turned to Lyra, his heart pounding with the weight of everything that was about to come. The final choice had been made. He had chosen to protect her, to fight for her. But as the woman had said, this was just the beginning. The forces after Lyra would stop at nothing to take her, and Mark knew that the final battle was coming. He wasn't just fighting for Lyra's future, he was fighting for his own. The time had come.